Human cloning has been an extremely controversial topic since animal cloning began in the late 1880s. I'm sure everyone is familiar with Dolly, the famous cloned sheep. With updated technology year after year, human cloning could soon become a reality. Just last year, according to the Huffington Post, a group of scientists in Oregon announced that they had created a human blastocyst using techniques sometimes called cloning. There are actually many types of human cloning, but today I'm going to be focusing on human reproductive cloning and why it should not be allowed. Reproductive cloning diminishes the uniqueness of an individual, it constrains psychological and social development, it's unsafe, it causes millions upon millions of terminated pregnancies, and from a Christian standpoint, it's unethical. Now, how many of you have ever wanted to have a clone? I know that I did growing up. Someone that looked exactly like me and could switch places with me if I needed them to. But sadly, that's not how human cloning works. Cloning is the process of creating identical cells, genes, or DNA, organs, or organisms. The American Medical Association defines human cloning as the application of somatic nuclear transfer technology to the creation of a human being that shares all of its nuclear genes with the person donating the implanted nucleus. A little hard to follow, right? The reproductive cloning process goes like this. The DNA of a cell is extracted and placed into an egg. The original nucleus is removed from the egg, and the cell is then grown into an embryo. It is planted into a surrogate mother through artificial insemination, and the DNA of the parent and offspring are identical. Sounds easy enough, but actually only 1 to 10% of all reproductive cloning is successful. If the process is successful, the offspring have short lives, high rates of tumor growth, and other infections. In this process, in order to produce an offspring, you need an embryo. To get an embryo, you have to terminate the pregnancy. The pregnancy will only be successful if the cloning process is successful, but millions upon millions of cloning processes are not successful, therefore terminating millions upon millions of pregnancies. CompellingTruth.org says, several blastocysts would probably need to be developed for a single live birth. Destroying a remaining unneeded blastocyst would be killing a child. Other considerations are high likelihood of the non-viability of an embryo in the presence of birth defects. The research required to get to the point of a live birth would require the destruction of countless embryos. The Whitehead Institute for Biomedical Research says the risk of amplification of genetic defects in the case of cloning is very high. At least 4% of all cells cloned have genetic defects. There are different kinds of genetic abnormalities that can prevent embryo implantation in a uterus, or cause the fetus to spontaneously abort, or the baby to die shortly after birth. It's like sending your baby up into a rocket knowing there's a 50-50 chance that it's going to blow up. It's grossly unethical. This was said by Lanza, which is the chief scientific officer at the biotech company of advanced cell technology. Reproductive cloning also has unpredictable outcomes. Psychologically, clones will be unpredictable. They will undoubtedly be treated different than non-cloned offsprings, and this could create a major social and psychological defect. Reproductive cloning also spurs a huge ethical debate. Human cloning is not popular with the religious crowd. As you can see, it is opposed by almost any religion you can think of. Being a Christian, I believe it is unethical from a biblical standpoint. With human reproductive cloning, new life is being biologically manufactured instead of created by the hand of God. Genesis 1:26 says, "Then God said, 'Let us make man in our image, after our likeness.'" And Genesis 2:7 says, "Then the Lord God formed the man of dust from the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and the man became a living creature." God is the one and only creator of man. Christian.org says, human cloning usurps God's position as the almighty creator. Children are gifts from God, not made to order by man. Even UNESCO's Declaration on the Human Genome and Human Rights declares that reproductive cloning of human beings is a deep violation of human rights and dignity. Right now, only 13 of the 50 states have adopted a law prohibiting reproductive human cloning. 3 states have research facilities and funds provided for human cloning. The resources alone to create a human clone is a huge barrier. And throughout the world, reproductive human cloning is banned almost entirely. So why is the US so far behind? I believe it's because our society is more accepting of risk and new technology. Even if you look at movies from today, you can see reproductive cloning that is being glamorized. For example, you have Star Wars, Corn, and Jurassic Park. Some people also argue that reproductive cloning has benefits, such as defective genes could be eliminated, which is proved wrong at least at this point, with 4% of all defective genes that are cloned that have defects. And others say that infertility could be eliminated, but what about the millions of pregnancies that are being terminated to get that one cloned child? Reproductive cloning is a scary reality that bends moral and ethical standards for a high-risk, low-reward product. God is the one and only true almighty creator, and not only is reproductive human cloning biologically manufacturing children, they are mass terminating them also.